Ladies and gentlemen, as we step into 2025, I want you to pause and take a moment to reflect not on what you need to do for others, not on how the world perceives you, but on yourself. This year, let's make a radical commitment to focus only on ourselves. Now, I know what you're thinking. It sounds selfish, maybe even a little self-absorbed. But let me tell you something important. Focusing on yourself isn't selfish, it's foundational. Authenticity is a word we hear often, yet it remains one of the most misunderstood concepts of modern life. People talk about being yourself as if it's a simple act, but in a world that constantly tells you to fit in, stand out, or play along, authenticity becomes a radical, even revolutionary practice. It's not easy to be authentic. It takes courage, vulnerability, and an unwavering commitment to knowing yourself. To understand authenticity, we must first recognize what it isn't. Authenticity isn't perfection. It isn't about being the best version of yourself all the time or presenting an image that's polished and ideal. That's performative. Authenticity is raw and real. It's messy. It's the willingness to show up as you are without masks or facades, even when you're afraid of judgment or rejection. The first step to authenticity is self-awareness. How can you be true to yourself if you don't truly know who you are? This is where the work begins. It requires slowing down and asking yourself the hard questions. Who am I when no one is watching? What do I value most deeply? What do I want, not what's expected of me, but what do I genuinely desire? These questions demand honesty, and sometimes the answers may surprise or even unsettle you. You might realize you've been living in ways that align more with external expectations than with your internal truth. That realization can be painful, but it's also liberating. Once you started to uncover your authentic self, the next challenge is to live in alignment with it. This is where courage comes into play. Authenticity asks you to make choices that honor your truth, even when those choices are difficult. It might mean saying no to opportunities that don't resonate with your values, even if they seem impressive to others. It might mean ending relationships that no longer support your growth or standing firm in your beliefs when they're unpopular. These are not easy decisions, but they are necessary if you want to live a life that feels meaningful and true. One of the greatest barriers to authenticity is the fear of rejection. As social creatures, we're wired to seek connection and approval. We want to be liked, to fit in, to belong. And there's nothing wrong with that. Belonging is a fundamental human need. But here's the catch: true belonging only happens when you're authentic. If you have to change yourself to fit in, you might gain acceptance, but it will be hollow because it's not you they're accepting. It's a version of you that you've curated to meet their expectations. Vulnerability is at the heart of authenticity. To be authentic is to show the world who you really are, warts and all. It's admitting that you don't have it all figured out, that you have fears, insecurities, and flaws. This can feel terrifying because it opens you up to criticism and rejection, but it also opens the door to genuine connection. When you're authentic, you give others permission to be authentic too. You create an environment where real relationships can flourish, relationships built on mutual understanding and respect, not on pretenses or illusions. Living authentically also requires letting go of comparison. In today's world, it's easier than ever to fall into the trap of measuring yourself against others. Social media in particular amplifies this tendency by presenting a curated highlight reel of other people's lives. But comparison is the enemy of authenticity. It shifts your focus outward, making you chase standards that may have nothing to do with your values or aspirations. To be authentic, you have to turn inward and focus on your own journey. What matters is not how your life stacks up against someone else's, but whether it aligns with your truth. Another important aspect of authenticity is embracing imperfection. We live in a culture that idolizes perfection, but the pursuit of it is a losing game. Perfection is an illusion. It doesn't exist. What does exist is progress, growth, and effort. When you accept that you're imperfect and that it's okay to be imperfect, you free yourself from the pressure to always get it right. This doesn't mean you stop striving to improve. It means you approach improvement from a place of self-compassion rather than self-criticism. Authenticity is also about reclaiming your power. When you're not living authentically, you're often giving your power away to societal norms, to other people's opinions, to the fear of failure. But when you embrace your authenticity, you take that power back. You realize that you're the author of your own story, not a character in someone else's. You start making choices that reflect your own values and priorities rather than conforming to what's expected of you. Finally, authenticity is a practice, not a destination. It's not something you achieve once and for all, it's something you work on every day. There will be moments when you fall back into old patterns, when you doubt yourself or struggle to stay true to your values. That's okay. What matters is that you keep coming back to yourself, keep choosing authenticity over approval, and keep showing up as you are, flaws and all. By embracing authenticity, you not only transform your own life, but you also inspire others to do the same. Authenticity is contagious. When people see you living your truth, it encourages them to examine their own lives and to be more honest with themselves and others. In this way, authenticity creates a ripple effect, spreading courage, vulnerability, and connection in a world that desperately needs them. When we hear the word boundaries, it often conjures images of barriers, fences, or walls, things designed to keep people out. But boundaries, when understood and applied correctly, are not about isolation or disconnection. Instead, they are bridges that allow us to create healthier relationships, deeper connections, and more authentic lives. Boundaries are not a rejection of others. They are a profound act of self-respect and self-care that ultimately improve how we relate to the world around us. At their core, boundaries are about defining what is acceptable and unacceptable in your life. They clarify where you end and others begin. This clarity is vital because without boundaries, we often find ourselves stretched too thin, overwhelmed, or resentful. We say yes when we mean no. We give too much of ourselves, sacrificing our own needs to please others. Over time, this erodes our sense of self and leaves us feeling unfulfilled and disconnected. Boundaries are the remedy. They empower us to protect our energy, time, and emotional well-being while still remaining open to connection. One of the biggest misconceptions about boundaries is that they are selfish. In reality, the opposite is true. Boundaries are a form of self-care that allows you to show up as your best self. When you set healthy boundaries, you are acknowledging your limits and recognizing that you cannot pour from an empty cup. Taking care of yourself first is not an act of selfishness, it is a necessary step to being fully present for others. Imagine trying to support a loved one while you're running on fumes. You might be physically there, but emotionally you're drained, distracted, or even resentful. Boundaries prevent this. They ensure that you can give from a place of abundance rather than depletion. Setting boundaries requires courage, especially if you're someone who is used to people-pleasing or avoiding conflict. It can feel uncomfortable to say no or to express your needs, particularly when you fear disappointing others or being judged. But boundaries are not about pleasing everyone. They are about protecting what matters most to you. They are an act of self-respect that signals to others that your time, energy, and emotions are valuable. It's important to understand that boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about taking responsibility for yourself. For example, if you set a boundary that you will no longer answer work emails after a certain time, you are not controlling your boss or colleagues. You are simply stating what you will and won't do. Boundaries are not ultimatums. They are guidelines for how you will manage your own actions and responses. This distinction is crucial because it shifts the focus from trying to change others to taking ownership of your own well-being. And the beauty of boundaries is that they create healthier and more sustainable relationships. Without boundaries, relationships can become unbalanced, with one person giving too much and the other taking too much. Over time, this dynamic breeds resentment and conflict. Boundaries restore balance. They allow both parties to express their needs and expectations clearly, paving the way for mutual respect and understanding. When you set a boundary, you are not saying, I don't care about you. You are saying, I care about us enough to make sure this relationship is healthy and respectful for both of us. Another powerful aspect of boundaries is that they teach others how to treat you. When you consistently enforce your boundaries, you send a clear message about what you will and won't tolerate. This is not about being harsh or punitive. It's about setting a standard for how you expect to be treated. For example, if someone consistently interrupts you during conversations, setting a boundary might mean calmly addressing the behavior and expressing your need to be heard. Over time, these small acts of boundary setting create an environment where respect and consideration are the norm. It's also important to recognize that boundaries are not static. They can and should evolve as you grow and your circumstances change. What worked for you in one stage of life may no longer serve you in another. For example, the boundaries you set in your early career may need to be adjusted as you take on new responsibilities or move into leadership roles. Similarly, boundaries in personal relationships may shift as dynamics change or as you gain a deeper understanding of your own needs. The key is to remain flexible and willing to revisit your boundaries regularly to ensure they align with your current values and priorities. Of course, setting boundaries is only part of the equation. Enforcing them is equally important. A boundary without follow-through is just a suggestion. Enforcing boundaries requires consistency and clear communication. This doesn't mean being rigid or unyielding. There will be times when flexibility is necessary, but it does mean standing firm in your values and priorities. For example, if you've set a boundary that you won't take work calls during family dinners, but you consistently make exceptions, you undermine your own boundary. Enforcing boundaries isn't about being inflexible, it's about staying true to yourself. One of the most profound shifts that occurs when you start setting boundaries is a newfound sense of freedom. It might seem counterintuitive, but boundaries don't restrict you, they liberate you. They free you from the pressure to be everything to everyone. They allow you to focus on what truly matters to you. They give you the space to rest, recharge, and pursue your passions without guilt or resentment. Lastly, boundaries are not about shutting people out, they're about creating pathways for healthier, more meaningful connections. When you set boundaries, you are not building walls, you are building bridges that connect you to others in a way that is sustainable, respectful, and authentic. Boundaries create the conditions for trust, understanding, and mutual support to flourish. They allow you to show up fully in your relationships, not as a depleted or overextended version of yourself, but as the best and truest version of who you are. Growth is often portrayed as a linear journey, a clean progression from one milestone to the next, marked by success, achievement, and self-improvement. But anyone who has truly embarked on a journey of growth knows this depiction is far from reality. Growth is messy. It's unpredictable. It's full of detours, setbacks, and moments of uncertainty. Yet it is in this messiness that the most profound transformation occurs. To truly grow, you must be willing to embrace the discomfort and chaos that come with it. At its core, growth is about change, and change is rarely neat or easy. When you decide to grow, whether it's by learning a new skill, pursuing a personal goal, or healing from past wounds, you are stepping out of your comfort zone. And stepping out of your comfort zone means stepping into the unknown. The unknown can be scary. It's a place where you are no longer in control, where the outcomes are uncertain, and where you may stumble or fail. This uncertainty is uncomfortable, but it's also necessary. Growth doesn't happen when you stay where it's safe. It happens when you take risks and venture into new territory. One of the most challenging aspects of growth is the inevitable mistakes and failures that come with it. Society often teaches us to fear failure, to see it as a sign of weakness or inadequacy. But failure is not the opposite of growth. It is a vital part of it. Every mistake you make is an opportunity to learn, to adjust, and to try again with greater wisdom and resilience. Instead of fearing failure, learn to see it as a teacher. Ask yourself, what can I take from this experience? How can this help me grow? When you shift your perspective in this way, failure becomes not an endpoint, but a stepping stone. Another hallmark of growth is the emotional turbulence it often brings. Growth requires you to confront uncomfortable truths about yourself, your fears, insecurities, and limitations. This self-reflection can be painful. It might bring up feelings of shame, frustration, or self-doubt. But these emotions are not signs that you're doing something wrong. They are signs that you're doing the work. Growth requires you to sit with these feelings, to acknowledge them without judgment, and to use them as fuel for your transformation. The messiness of growth is also evident in how non-linear it is. You might make progress in one area only to feel like you're regressing in another. You might achieve a major breakthrough only to encounter a new challenge that feels even more daunting. This back and forth can be discouraging if you expect growth to follow a straight path. But the truth is, growth is more like a spiral than a straight line. You might revisit the same struggles or lessons multiple times, but each time you approach them with greater understanding and strength. This is not failure, it's progress in disguise. One of the most liberating realizations about growth is that it doesn't have to look a certain way. There is no one-size-fits-all blueprint for transformation. Your journey will be unique to you, shaped by your experiences, values, and goals. It's easy to fall into the trap of comparing your progress to others, especially in a world where people often showcase their successes while hiding their struggles. But comparison is the enemy of growth. Instead of looking outward, focus inward. Measure your progress against where you started, not against where someone else is. Another important aspect of embracing the messiness of growth is learning to let go of perfectionism. Perfectionism tells us that we must get everything right the first time, that anything less than flawless is unacceptable. But perfectionism is a lie. It keeps us stuck, afraid to take risks or try new things because we fear falling short. Growth, on the other hand, is messy by design. It's about showing up, trying, failing, and trying again. It's about being willing to be a beginner, to not have all the answers, and to give yourself grace along the way. It's also important to recognize that growth is not always about adding more to your life. Sometimes it's about letting go. Letting go of old habits, beliefs, or relationships that no longer serve you can be incredibly difficult. It can feel like a loss, like you're leaving behind a part of yourself. But letting go creates space for new possibilities. It's a necessary part of the growth process, even if it feels messy or painful in the moment. The messiness of growth also extends to how it affects your relationships. As you change, your dynamics with others may shift. Not everyone will understand or support your growth, and that can be hard to navigate. You may outgrow certain relationships or find that your new priorities clash with the expectations of others. This can be messy and uncomfortable, but it's also a sign that you are evolving. The relationships that truly matter will adapt and grow with you. Finally, embracing the messiness of growth means cultivating patience and self-compassion. Growth takes time. There will be days when you feel like you're making incredible progress and days when it feels like you're stuck in the same place. Both are part of the process. Be kind to yourself in the moments of struggle. Celebrate your small victories, even if they seem insignificant. Remember that growth is not about reaching a final destination, it's about becoming more fully yourself along the way. The messiness of growth is not something to fear or avoid, it is something to welcome. It is proof that you are alive, that you are learning, and that you are brave enough to evolve. Each stumble, each tear, and each hard-won lesson is a testament to your courage and resilience. Growth is not about perfection, it's about the beautiful, messy, imperfect process of becoming. In a world that often seems dominated by uncertainty, division, and hardship, joy can feel like a fleeting luxury, something to be savored only in brief moments or after everything is finally fixed. But joy is far more than a passing emotion or a reward for a problem-free life. Joy is a powerful, transformative act of resistance. It is a defiant assertion of humanity in the face of adversity. It says, I will not let the weight of the world crush my spirit. Joy is not a denial of struggle. It is a deliberate choice to rise above it. Resistance is often associated with fighting against something, a system, and injustice, a status quo. But resistance is also about building something new. It's about creating space for hope, connection, and meaning. Joy is a cornerstone of that creation. When you choose joy, you are refusing to let external circumstances dictate your inner state. You are reclaiming your agency and saying, I decide how I will experience this moment, this day, this life. At its core, joy is an act of presence. It requires you to slow down, to tune into the beauty and goodness around you, even in the smallest of things. This is not always easy in a culture that glorifies busyness and productivity. We are taught to keep striving, to keep achieving, as if joy is something we'll find at the end of a checklist. But joy doesn't live in the future, it lives in the here and now. It's found in the sound of laughter, in the warmth of a hug, in the feeling of sunlight on your skin. These moments of joy are small acts of rebellion against a world that tells you to keep moving, to keep wanting more, to keep proving your worth. Joy is also a form of self-care, and self-care is inherently revolutionary in a world that profits from your stress, insecurity, and exhaustion. When you prioritize joy, you are declaring that your well-being matters, that your life is about more than mere survival. This is particularly significant for marginalized communities, where systemic inequities often seek to diminish dignity and hope. For those who face injustice, choosing joy is a way of saying, you will not define me. You will not break me. I will find light even in the darkest places. But joy is not just an individual experience, it is a collective force. Joy connects us. It reminds us of our shared humanity and helps us build relationships rooted in love, compassion, and solidarity. Think of the way music, art, or shared laughter can dissolve barriers between people. These expressions of joy are not frivolous, they are essential. They are what sustain movements, communities, and cultures. When we come together in joy, we strengthen the bonds that enable us to keep fighting for a better world. It's important to distinguish joy from escapism. Joy is not about ignoring the problems of the world or pretending that everything is fine. It's about finding moments of light, even in the midst of struggle. In fact, joy can give you the strength to face hardship head-on. It refuels you, reminding you of what you're fighting for. It's the reason activists sing during marches, why families celebrate milestones, even in difficult times, and why humor often flourishes in the most challenging situations. These acts of joy are not distractions, they are acts of survival and renewal. Choosing joy also requires vulnerability. In a world that often values cynicism and detachment, joy can feel risky. It asks you to open your heart, to let yourself feel deeply, to admit that something matters to you. Vulnerability is often framed as weakness, but it is one of the greatest strengths you can cultivate. When you embrace joy, you are embracing life in all its fullness, the beauty and the pain, the hope and the heartbreak. This openness is not naive, it is courageous. Joy is also deeply intertwined with gratitude. When you practice gratitude, you are training yourself to see the good in your life, no matter how small or fleeting it may seem. Gratitude doesn't ignore pain or struggle, but it shifts your focus. It helps you recognize that even in the hardest times, there are still moments of wonder and grace. This perspective is not just comforting, it's empowering. It reminds you that joy is not something you have to wait for. It's something you can create, even in the most unlikely circumstances. For many, joy is also rooted in a sense of purpose. When you align your actions with your values, when you contribute to something greater than yourself, you experience a deeper, more lasting form of joy. This is not the fleeting pleasure of material success or external validation. It is the fulfillment that comes from living authentically and making a difference. Purpose-driven joy is resilient. It sustains you through challenges because it is anchored in meaning, not circumstance. Finally, joy is a reminder of your power. In a world that often tries to make you feel small or powerless, joy is a way of reclaiming your strength. It's a way of saying, I am here, I am alive, and I will not be defeated. This is why joy is such a powerful act of resistance. It defies despair. It refuses to let fear or anger have the last word. It reminds you that even in the face of great difficulty, you have the capacity to create beauty, to experience love, and to find hope. By embracing joy, you are not turning away from the struggles of the world. You are equipping yourself to face them with courage, resilience, and grace. You are choosing to believe in the possibility of something better, and in doing so, you are helping to build it. In a world that often glorifies perfection, it's easy to become trapped in the pursuit of an unattainable ideal. We're constantly bombarded with images of flawless lives, flawless bodies, and flawless careers, leading many of us to believe that anything less than perfection is a failure. But the truth is, perfection is a myth. It's a moving target, one that is shaped by unrealistic standards and external pressures. Real growth, fulfillment, and success are not found in perfection, they are found in progress. Progress over perfection is a mindset that encourages action over stagnation, learning over judgment, and growth over self-criticism. When we prioritize progress, we give ourselves permission to be imperfect, to make mistakes, and to learn along the way. In doing so, we liberate ourselves from the crippling fear of failure and open the door to real achievement. Perfectionism often arises from a desire to avoid failure, to protect ourselves from criticism, or to meet external expectations. But this desire for perfection is often rooted in fear. Fear of being judged, fear of not being good enough, or fear of disappointing others. The problem with perfectionism is that it creates a cycle of self-doubt, procrastination, and paralysis. We spend so much time trying to get everything just right that we delay action altogether. In the meantime, we miss out on opportunities for growth, learning, and creativity. Progress, on the other hand, is about moving forward with what you have, taking the next step, even if it's not perfect. It's about showing up, taking risks, and embracing the process. Instead of focusing on an idealized end result, progress allows you to focus on the next step, the next improvement, and the next learning opportunity. It's about embracing the journey, not just the destination. The key to understanding progress over perfection is recognizing that growth is messy. It's not linear, it's not always smooth. You will stumble, you will fall, and you will fall. And you will make mistakes. And that's okay. In fact, it's more than okay, it's necessary. Mistakes are how we learn. Failure is not a setback, it's a teacher. When you embrace progress over perfection, you acknowledge that mistakes are part of the learning process, and you give yourself permission to fail without letting it define you. This mindset shift also helps to eliminate the fear of judgment. So often we avoid taking action because we're afraid of what others might think. We worry that if we're not perfect, we'll be criticized, rejected, or dismissed. But when you focus on progress, you stop measuring yourself against others and start measuring yourself against your own growth. Instead of comparing yourself to the perfect versions of others, you ask yourself, am I better today than I was yesterday? Have I learned something new? Have I moved forward? Even if it's just a small step, when you make progress your measure of success, the opinions of others lose their power over you. Perfectionism also stifles creativity. When we are overly focused on getting things perfect, we limit our ability to innovate and think outside the box. Creativity thrives when we are willing to experiment, to take risks, and to try things that might not work. Perfectionism, on the other hand, keeps us confined to the known and the safe. By prioritizing progress, we free ourselves to explore new ideas, to make mistakes, and to find creative solutions to problems. Progress over perfection opens up space for innovation and originality. Another important aspect of progress is that it encourages consistency over intensity. Many people approach goals with the mindset of needing to make a dramatic, immediate change. They want to see instant results, and when they don't, they become discouraged or give up altogether. But progress is about small, consistent actions taken over time. It's the daily habits, the incremental improvements, and the quiet perseverance that lead to meaningful change. Progress doesn't happen overnight. It's the result of consistent effort, even when the results aren't immediately visible. When you focus on progress over perfection, you also learn to embrace self-compassion. Perfectionism is often accompanied by harsh self-criticism. When things aren't perfect, we tend to be our own worst enemies. We berate ourselves for not being good enough, and we create a negative internal dialogue that makes it harder to move forward. Progress over perfection encourages you to be kind to yourself. It allows you to acknowledge where you are without judgment and to celebrate the steps you've taken, no matter how small. This shift in mindset creates a more supportive and nurturing relationship with yourself, which is essential for long-term growth and well-being. One of the most powerful aspects of focusing on progress is that it keeps us engaged in the process rather than fixating on the outcome. Perfectionism is future-focused. It's about getting to the end and achieving a flawless result. Progress, however, is about staying present and enjoying the journey. It's about the satisfaction of knowing you are making an effort, learning and improving, regardless of the immediate results. When we focus too much on perfection, we miss out on the joy of the process. Progress allows us to stay grounded in the present moment and appreciate the small wins along the way. The pursuit of perfection can be exhausting. It requires constant vigilance, relentless effort, and a fear of imperfection. It often leads to burnout, frustration, and a sense of never being enough. Progress, on the other hand, is freeing. It allows you to move at your own pace, to adjust your approach, and to take breaks when necessary. It's about setting realistic goals and celebrating the progress you make toward them. Progress reminds you that you don't need to be perfect to be valuable, to be worthy, or to be successful. When we embrace progress over perfection, we shift from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance. Perfectionism is rooted in fear and a sense of lack. It tells us that we must be flawless to succeed. Progress, however, is rooted in growth and possibility. It encourages us to see that every step forward, no matter how small, is an accomplishment. It reminds us that we are constantly evolving, learning, and becoming better versions of ourselves. Progress is abundant because it recognizes that growth is not about perfection, it's about becoming the best version of who we are, one step at a time. In the end, the pursuit of perfection can keep us stuck in the same place, paralyzed by fear of failure and the pressure to be flawless. But when we choose progress over perfection, we open ourselves up to growth, creativity, and self-compassion. We allow ourselves to make mistakes, learn, and continue moving forward. We give ourselves the freedom to enjoy the process and celebrate every small victory along the way. Because in the end, progress is what leads to lasting change. In conclusion, embracing the mindset of progress over perfection is not just a philosophy, but a powerful transformative choice that can reshape how we live, grow, and experience life. It liberates us from the suffocating grip of unrealistic standards and allows us to focus on the journey, not just the destination. When we shift our attention from perfection to progress, we invite growth, creativity, and self-compassion into our lives. We acknowledge that mistakes are a necessary part of learning and that every step forward, no matter how small, is a step toward becoming our best selves. By prioritizing progress, we empower ourselves to move forward with confidence, resilience, and the understanding that true success is not measured by flawlessness, but by the courage to keep going, evolving, and improving. So let us embrace the messiness, the uncertainty, and the beauty of progress, for it is in this journey that we find our most authentic and meaningful growth.